If you go alone as a self-employed estate agency today, there's a 30% chance that you won't be a self-employed estate agent in a year's time. My guest today is Kelly Bailey, who is the agent success coach at the Property Experts. Her role there is to make sure as many of their partner agents succeed as possible. So, Kelly, why do you think that number is so high in the self-employed agency world?
Wow. It's devastating to hear that actually it is that high. And, I think looking back to my first experiences within estate agency as an estate agent, I could tell you exactly now the fear factor of lack of knowledge and lack of training. I think that was a huge thing for me. And that we're talking 12 years ago, and there's so much more to learn and so much more portals and tech and everything to use now. I think the key thing, and I've been with the property experts for just under 18 months. And I think the first thing that we looked at was our, percentage of dropout and, what were the key reasons. A lot of it was to do with the support, because it's very overwhelming. It's very daunting. They have to know so much in such a little time. And, there's always that fear of what if it doesn't work? What if I don't get that first market appraisal, that first conversation? And a lot of it is down to let's take you one step at a time. So I think it is a huge factor is going to be down to the lack of training and support that they have in those first stages. And I taught my guys through, you're all going to go through this period of oh my god moment, and I always do this because I always think it's all really high and exciting at this point. You've made the decision, it's brilliant, and then you go through this, oh, this is reality, and I've actually had to learn so much stuff and put it into action, and now I'm at this point of make or break, and that is that kind of 3 month 6 month period. So it's the network that you're with, it's the support that you've got, it's the isolation that you might have, and all of that has to be taken into account when you're supporting agents like ours.
Do you think that part of the issue is that when you first launch an estate agency business, you've got so many plates to spin? I mean, there's the compliance stuff of setting up your company and VAT and all that sort of stuff. But even from day one, you've got a lot of plates to spin with regard to am I marketing? Am I social media? Should I be going out lead generation? Should I be doing market? Well, so many things to spin. Do you think it's the case that agents, when they first launch, they kind of go, where do I go? Which ones do I start off with?
Oh, absolutely. Where do I start? And again, the factors of things that we put into our agents training and the induction period is not just a week. It's not just here, watch some videos and good luck. We'll see you in a bit. We've got the pre-induction week, which is the conversations we have is, what area do you feel is quite daunting? When we're talking about plate spinning, you've got to be able to do all of these things to a certain degree, and you've also got to do them consistently. So, what at the moment is starting, to make you feel I'm not going to be that person to do that. And I will say, estate agents they're not the video friendly. They don't like to be on camera. They don't like to do all the things that make them feel uncomfortable. So generally it's that. And you think about all these different things that they have to layer up in consistency. So I think it's going to be a case of like talking through what they need to be doing and giving them a full, honest, true picture before they start. So we lead up to that, then we go through our, induction program, and they're talking to people that are thinking the same, feeling the same. And we're talking about all these different things that they need to juggle. And by the end of the week, we think, well, actually, let me just give you what your first 30 days should look like. Let's talk that through, because if you don't get that market appraisal, you're going to panic. If I don't have the right networking event, do I panic? So, giving them the first 30 days and then coaching them through the first 3 months of saying, have you been doing the different activity consistently, and supporting them and where they feel that they're going wrong, but then finally holding them accountable. It means that they're going to do all of those things and they're going to do them well.
So
Like that.
well, I think the key word you mentioned, I think you mentioned consistency three times. I think I was counting through that. So do you think that's the main element that kind of separates the winners from the losers, to be very harsh about it? You think it is consistency in their business?
Yeah, the guys who hit the ground running and they follow the process, they don't overcomplicate it. They don't try and rewrite it, because that's another thing I think is really prominent, is when you've got a model that works, and yeah, you can evolve it into your own characteristics, your own personality. That's great. But some people spend so much time rewriting what we've said. Oh, we've tried that, doesn't work. We've tried that, doesn't work. Or they put all their focus into one area. So it's like that. Well, you're spending so much energy and time into that one piece when you've got 5 other things that you should be doing, and we told you what you should be doing. So I think the game changers happen when you say, right, have you followed it consistently? Have you done the process? And it is follow the process. It works. We've tried and tested it, and it's come from a lot of very good experience. So go and do it. And they're the ones that find the success. And it does take time. It takes a lot of commitment, but consistency is definitely the word. I have to say that.
I feel your I don't want to say frustration. I feel your pain on that side. So, from a man who worked at the property franchise group for a very long time, obviously you sell a lot of franchises working at the property franchise group. The number of people who would join the business and go, kind of the whole point of a franchise is you buy a business in a box and you kind of just do what they say you should need to do, and everything's kind of set up for you. You just need to kind of do the doing effectively. And the percentage of people who come on board and go, yeah, I know you're saying I should do this, but actually I'm going to do this instead. And you're like, no, no, you bought a franchise. This is why you bought a franchise. Is we're giving you the shortcuts about what you should do. You don't need to kind of reinvent the wheel. You have the wheel already. Just use what we're giving you.
Absolutely. That's, I think it is because it'd be when you've got so many things that they need to be thinking about, and they've got all these ideas and they're all excited, and yeah, you're coming from maybe an entrepreneurial background, or you're coming from an estate agency but more a traditional route. So everyone kind of gets stuck in their ways, don't they? And it could be like that, the more, I won't say showboating, but that side of it, which is very entrepreneurial, but there's no depth, or maybe the knowledge needs to be fitting in. But the traditional guys, they need to be able to step it up and be more confident and be the personality, because that is state agency now. So we've got to get them in the middle. And we've said, actually, we've done a lot of work to create that process for you. Just please follow it. Follow it. And that's a lot of it is, my coaching calls are, on a weekly basis for 3 months. And then I have them once a month. And I hold them accountable for the key factors and those layers of activity that we give them. And we say to them, you've got to be honest with me. I can't be there and hold your hand every day and come out and do this with you. You have to hold it accountable for the reasons that you told us in the beginning of why you wanted to do this in the first place.
Do you think that some people sandbag because they're worried about it not working out? So some people might hold back from putting things on their social media, for example, might hold back from telling friends what they're doing and sort of really kind of dropping the nuclear bomb on the marketing side of things because they're worried that if it doesn't work out, they're going to look a bit stupid. Do you find that sometimes is the situation?
I do. And that's where a lot of them seem to think, well, what if I have a private account that does something completely different and I don't utilize my personal network? I don't want to bother my friends and family. And yeah, I think when you're doing a new venture, and you're saying to your friends and family, I'm going to do this, you've committed. You've told people, and that's really scary, isn't it? So, but actually, part of our process is to lead up to that and to making them feel comfortable in the support that you're asking from your network. You're not selling something to your friends and family, you're asking for the support, and just to make sure that they're acknowledging the things that you're doing that makes you feel more credible, in terms of what you're doing with social media. Yes, people do tend to go, well, I'm doing this, this, and this. I'm thinking, I've not seen this yet. This is great. I'm really loving this idea. Where is it? And they go, oh, well, I'll do that later, or I'll do that later, because of the overthinking aspect. So that is, it happens quite a lot. And they tend to do things that you think, well, yeah, you could have done this 3 weeks ago. You could have started this. You had the vibe and the motivation 3 weeks ago. So, yeah, absolutely right that they save it up.
I've started stealing Tom Cruise's line from Top Gun Maverick, which is less think, more do. And just get on with it. We all spend a lot of time thinking about, oh, I should do this or I could do that. Actually, the way you learn the most is just by doing it and going, actually, that was really good, or actually, that was absolutely terrible. I need to do X, Y, and Z next time. So there's only so much thinking you can do in a business before you actually have to get on with it and kind of do the doing.
Yeah, I think I have so many conversations with the agents and they go, but what if? And where if it goes wrong? Or what if I look stupid? And think if I think back to the things that I did 12 years ago, or even, when I sort of went in the training side of things and started promoting myself, as an estate agency coach, you're thinking, the things that I said maybe 3 years ago, I don't really think that that's relevant now. Oh, I think, God, that was awful. That first video that I did, and how many bloopers that I did. And even now I do it, you're overthinking. And I think sometimes you just go, oh, for goodness sake, just do it. And that take is usually the better one. And that could be relevant to anything, any of these activities that we ask them to do in their first 3 months.
Yep. And full disclosure for anyone who's listening in on this who is in the early stage of their business. Obviously, I launched my business almost a year ago, exactly, and I had exactly the same feelings. I thought, oh, I want to launch it, but it doesn't go very well. Maybe I shouldn't tell that many people, etc. And actually, I thought to go in the complete opposite direction, have zero plan B, and go full sort of nuclear bomb at it from day one. And at least if it doesn't work out, I can hand on heart, step back a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, and go, look, well, I threw everything I had at it. It didn't work out. That's fine. The real kind of travesty and the shame would have been not doing it in the first place.
Absolutely. And if you tell people, that is commitment, and even that is an emotional driver, isn't it? Because I've told people that I'm going to do this, so I want to be successful. And if you've got the support around you for the next steps, I think sometimes there's an element of not having that kind of support within networks. And when you're thinking about, well, I'm going to launch my business, I'm going to have a bit of training, I'm going to understand the systems. That's brilliant. But from the next steps, actually, I feel so isolated. I feel ridiculous. I shouldn't have done this. I should be feeling great and elated. My phone should be ringing off the hook. And that's that sort of it's that imposter feeling, isn't it?
Mm.
Am I as good as I thought I would be? And now I've told all my friends and family, so what do I do next? And actually, it's going to evolve. And if
Yeah,
the people that you know and love, just in the sense of your experience or your passion and your sales ability, they will support you no matter what you decide to do. And the people who don't, well, should they be in your circle? Is that my question?
absolutely. So there's a book by Seth Godin, which is, I mean, I say it's a book, it's more of a pamphlet, it's that short, and it's called The Dip. And effectively, I'll summarize the book in 30 seconds to save the time of reading 20 pages. Effectively, it says that anything you start new, there'll be a time in the future where you think to yourself, have I made the right choice? And that could be launching a new business, it could be having a new partner, it could be changing the color of your hair, whatever it may be. So at some point, you're going to look back and go, oh, have I made the right choice going self-employed? Have I made the right choice changing from this agency to this agency, for example? And the important bit isn't necessarily the fact that that's going to happen to you. The important bit is that you recognize that that is the dip. And that is the time where you are at your lowest, and you've got two choices in that situation. Either you go, I knew this dip was coming, and I'm going to double down and actually really kind of hit it head on, and that's going to make a success out of it. Or you go, it's not for me, and it all kind of tails off into Never Never Land, and that's that. So one of the important things about having a business is knowing that is going to come. Whether it's after 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, whatever, at some point you're going to think to yourself, have I made the right choice? And in that moment, it's your choice to go, I'm going for it or I'm not.
This is amazing. It's something that one of my old managers told me, or leader actually. We talk about managing and leading, but anyway, but she told me that you go through the emotional change curve. And obviously you can Google it, it's there, and everyone talks about it. And again, you can relate this to absolutely any decision that you make in your life. And I talk to my agents about it on day one. I say, you are going in the same way that I used to predict for my sellers and my buyers. This is going to be emotional. It's going to be a challenge. And the minute we've got our soul subject to contract, it's really exciting, but actually that's where the hard work starts, and that's where it all feels quite scary, or it feels really real. And that's exactly the same thing for our agents. So put yourself in their shoes. You've got to preempt these things, prepare them, because when they get to that point, especially if they're feeling quite isolated and they sit at that point where it is the dip, or wherever we want to call it, you do go into that kind of fight or flight mode, I suppose. And I think the fighters start to solutionize, and then they start to get into that place where they go, wow, that's where I'm actually getting under pressure. I'm answering my own questions. I always feel like I work better to a deadline. And I work literally, if I've got a few hours, or if I've got a week to do something, I won't do it. If I've got a few hours, because I've got to do it, I know that I come out with my best stuff because I don't overthink it and I just go for it. So when they get to this point, and I talk to my agents about this all the time. In fact, I did this exercise today with somebody, and I thought, do you know what? You are in the same boat, and everyone's been here. Most people have been here, and get hit this point, and now is make or break. Now it's exciting, so I'm going to trust in you that we've brought you on board for the reasons that I know you've got the passion, the dedication, and all of this that you wanted. And I remind them of their visions and their goals that we talked about before we even started. And we get to this point, okay, right, so what are you going to do? And they go into solutionizing mode, because it is a little bit of that. This has got to work for me. And when it does, and you see people 6 months, a year, 12, sort of 2 years on, and they go, oh God, that feeling gave me a reality check, but I'm so glad I pushed through it. That's the bit that, and that's my job. I have to get them to push through these moments because I know that the other side of it is so, so worth it.
And I think that's one of the questions I ask when I'm sort of interviewing clients about whether we want to work together, sort of thing in the future. My question is, which is a little bit of a trick question, is say to them, what's your plan B? So let's say this estate agency life doesn't work out for you, and it doesn't work out being self-employed. What would be your plan B? And if that point anyone ever says to me, my plan would be going back to work at so and so, or I'd just go and work for my mum and dad, or whatever it may be, very sorry, but you're not going to be a client of mine. Unless they say there is no plan B, or I'm making this work or I'm dying, great, you can be a client. That's absolutely brilliant. But that's always one of the questions I ask at a very early stage to see actually how committed they are to this.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about forward developments. I know Sean Newman, who owns the Property Experts, is a big fan of personal development, and you've been to see loads of cool stuff. You've been to Tony Robbins, you've been to loads of cool things, which I think to myself, that's a really cool day out. So how was Tony Robbins, first of all?
I did actually get to go to Tony Robbins, so
Ah,
I was just going to smile and nod then for a second, but
I've called it. I've called
I
it.
had the choice, but I had a family friend's 40th, and I kind of chose that one anyway. But I was gutted, absolutely gutted, because the feedback that I had from the guys, and I've been on loads of his webinars as well. So I've had some courses, and Sean actually, very kindly put me onto some of those courses online. So I can say that they are overwhelmingly exciting, and you come away from them feeling absolutely drained, but so liberated. And it's just incredible. And that has to just continue. So, and then we went to the Entrepreneur Circle last year, and there's lots of little things that I think, if you can keep that environment and working around people like that, it keeps you focused on, oh yeah, I'm in this zone. I'm here to achieve, which is good. So I'm not answering your question properly, but I didn't get to go.
So how important is that then? How important is that continued learning and continued development? Because you mentioned earlier, your videos from 3 years ago are out of date and they're all kind of irrelevant, effectively, or not relevant, but they've all kind of changed over the last couple of years or so. So how important is it for agents to kind of keep that continued learning and sort of stay on top of their game moving forward?
So I'm a strong believer in the fact that selling houses isn't complicated. I think the process hasn't changed for 50 years. It's evolved, and there's more tech around it, and there's more support for agents to get things done. But when it comes to the clients, the actual process doesn't really change. What does is, the ability for an agent to go, how do I make my return of investment better? So how much time do I spend in certain factors of this job where I could spend more time on the relationship side and the customer side and the getting to know my clients better for those long-term lifetime relationships. And all of that is evolving every single month, especially with God, AI, and there's different areas, different ways you could go, and you think, oh, is this just a fad, or is this actually going to do me any good? So I mean, we do a bit of hard graft around those things. So when we look at new techniques, new portals, new platforms, and things that are coming into play, we do so much research on, do we think that's a flash in the pan, or do we think that's actually going to benefit a state agency? Is it going to raise the standards, is obviously the key question that we always hold very strong. So there's that element to it. And I think as an estate agent for your clients, they don't need to know about home search or focal agent or propel or any of these different platforms. They don't care. They just want to know that you can sell their house in the best way possible, get the best price in the most efficient time frame. That's all they care about. So when we're talking to our agents about it, it's like, well, we've done the hard graft and the research, so you can basically go, I'm going to give this a go, and if it works for me, fantastic. If it doesn't, I don't have to use it, and that's great. That's a choice. And that comes from obviously the process of being a great estate agent. You should be evolving the skills and the techniques of things that you do. You should always be revising the process of the client journey. Like, you should always be revising that, because I think if you can really learn from every single opportunity that you get. I mean, Chris, that there's a million different scenarios of clients that you've got, and so many curveballs and so many things that can happen on the day of exchange, or in negotiations or open days, that I think it's so important that people get every different technical way of dealing with these situations. So you're never done. You are never done evolving that client journey. How can you always be better? And we've just recently done that actually for our customer. You know, our customer is our agent. So we've done a whole remap of what our client goes through when they join, you know, a self-employed model. And then obviously they go through to how do we evolve it and keep it going. So we talk about, you know, working with people like yourself. You know, we research the best trainers and the consultants so that we can get more support for them outside of what I can do. But then we also have the courses and the accreditation that we work into. And I think when we talk to our agents about what they think about self development, if they are the kind of person who says, what I've done has always been great, I'm good at what I do, this will do fine, I don't really want to work with them because they're a bit stuck in that zone of this will do. And that's not good enough. You know, that's not good enough for them. That's not good enough for their client. They should be getting the world class experience, the buyer, the seller, and anybody connected to them. So you should always be evolving your client journey. But for self development, I mean, we set goals and we do things for each other to say, well, what do you want to do personally? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to buy? What do you want to do for your family? Is it health, wealth, fitness, whatever it is? And all of those things are self-development. And I think sometimes it opens your eyes that if you get the work-life balance in between that as well, you'll end up with the fact you've got time to self-develop and you get more ideas and inspiration from other people. So you end up with a full balance for that.
So I think we're very much in agreement that it's a really important thing to do and definitely something agents should be doing. So
Yeah.
why do you think I'm going to take a stab in the dark on the figures here and say the minority of estate agents kind of try and progress themselves with regard to ongoing development, and the majority probably go, "Oh, I know a lot, and I'm pretty good sort of thing. I might listen to a podcast at Christmas while I fall asleep." Why do you think more agents don't develop themselves personally?
I think it's time. You know, I think the job itself is quite emotionally draining. You've got to get so heavily involved in every single case. And I think probably the majority are dealing with too many cases. You know, they're dealing with too many sales, too many maybe dead stock that they're worried about, the market reviews they should be doing, hopefully. And then obviously the progression side of things to make sure that they are on track. And I just think that they put it to the side because they go, I haven't got time. I haven't got time to develop my skills. And all I want to say to them is if you do that, you will reduce the amount of time spent on the stuff that is not going to return you any investment. So actually, give me a few hours. You know, give me a few hours a week of self-development, which is why we do certain training every week, why we do you know, we're talking about accreditations and we're doing extra learning and different ways of doing things because we want you to have more time on your hands to spend with your family. So the majority are so stuck in this zone of, I only have the time of day to deal with what I've got in this moment. They live in that moment. What you've got to do, and what you try to do with as many agents as we can, is give them the bigger picture and say, like, really delegate your time because actually having that plan and having that self development and time with your family and fitness and all these different things, all of a sudden, your time spent on your business is actually more productive. Otherwise, you're being a busy fool.
Yeah,
So,
quite.
yeah, I think the majority it's a case of time delegation and thinking to themselves, actually, I do need to take some time to really understand what is out there to make my life easier, to have more time for my clients. Because at the moment, I'm just running around stressed and emotionally drained.
Yeah, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? Because you're so busy doing sort of the day-to-day, the doing, the chasing, the viewings, the valuations, all this sort of stuff that actually you haven't got time to do the self sort of progression stuff that would
Yeah,
actually help you out in that thing. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling cycle on that side.
yeah. Stop, reassess what you're doing. And I think obviously it's a conversation that we have a lot with agents that we're talking to because they're an independent agent and they've got so much time that they can do things. Um, and they've got probably, you know, things landing on their shoulders because they've got to pay people, and all those different conversations that we have, which mean actually, if you take this time, I promise your life will be more simplistic in the sense, and you'll be actually focusing your work on the things that return on investment, but do things that are brilliant for your clients.
So you mentioned qualifications just now. You mentioned qualifications very in passing there. How important do you think qualifications play a role in the future of a state agency?
In the future, I think it is a absolute must. It is something that has bugged me probably for the last 5 years or so. When I first started in training, in fact, no longer than that, because I was shocked when I came into a state agency and I was called a fast track. So this puts it in perspective exactly how agents can fall into a state agency, which is so, so sad. I was in performing arts. I then went into sales because I had the people skills. I then saw an invite to a recruitment drive for a company which I loved working for in the future. However, it was so easy for me to fall into a state agency because I was a people person. That was, and I could obviously I can sell and I could learn very quickly, but as a fast track, they wanted me out on the road within 6 weeks. So I sat in the office, I was on the headsets, I was taking bookings, I was asking questions, booking appointments for market appraisals, and they just said, right, we need you out. I said, okay. So it was fake it until you make it, basically. And it was awful. For me, I was pretty good at it, but I didn't really understand it. And so many of my colleagues kind of came in and said, oh, God, this is too big. This is too much responsibility. It's people's hundreds of thousands of pounds. And the chains are always complex, and you're trying to deal with all of that. So I think if you fall into it, it's devastating. I think if you work your way up the levels, so you obviously got, you go into as a viewer, you can go into then negotiations and then, admin or progression or whatever it is, the different levels, and eventually you'll become a valuer and you'll learn as you go. But we're still dealing with people's biggest investment of their lives. How is that not necessary to have an accreditation? But I think it's awful. You can book holidays and they are obviously protected, and there's certain things that they have to do to be an accredited travel agent. Well, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds. And I really think that clients will all of a sudden start to realize, as people get more qualified, that they're the ones who are actually thinking, hold on, we really need to make sure that we're doing everything to the book. And the qualifications that we're putting ourselves through in SELA, I will say some of it is, it's a little bit mind-boggling, and you sort of go, do I really need to know this? And you're learning about dry rot and wet rot and all these different things. You think, oh my goodness, that's what a surveyor's for. But actually now I know that I know what to preempt. If that came up, I know that context and I don't look like a rabbit in a headlight. So I can actually help my client understand it more by being an expert. And it is so, so important as an industry that we get to that point where every estate agent has to be qualified,
Yep.
level 3, whatever it needs to be. But if I could actually speak to the right person to say, can that happen faster? And I'm not saying I'm putting myself through it as well, and I've done other courses, but this is one of the bigger ones. It's painful. I don't like learning in that sense. It's not always nice doing the multiple choices, but it is what it is, and we have to do it to make sure that estate agents are seen as a little bit more of a higher standard in this country.
Yep.
Most countries have it, don't they? You have to be accredited, and we don't.
Absolutely. I
Bizarre.
think I think that for any estate agents listening to this who are kind of shaking their head and going, I don't, I went to a estate agency because I didn't want to do qualifications and all this sort of stuff. If
Yeah.
there's one light on the horizon for those people who are thinking actually the regulation is a bad thing, more than likely your fees won't increase nationally until some sort of accreditation comes in. So when accreditation comes in for the country, whether it's Labour government and say you need to have ALA, whatever, or whatever qualification it might be going forward, or ROPA going in, at that stage, fees will increase because it will be a higher bar of entry to be an estate agent. So therefore, there'll be less estate agents. It'll be less easy to be an estate agent. So therefore, you can charge more. So
Yeah.
even if you don't like accreditations and learning that sort of stuff, you'll get paid more for doing it.
Yeah, it's short-term pain, long-term goal, right? And I think you sort of hit the nail on the head there, that there's got to be a benefit for you. And I'm sorry for any agent who's thinking, oh God, don't promote it, don't push it further forward. I'm not saying not severely, but I'm dyslexic and I hate sitting down and I can't revise and I can't focus long enough. And I'm quite happy to say that I would struggle. If I'm a salesperson, I'm generally more practical. And I think that part of the brain works better with people who are in the sales environment, and they're very sort of energetic, and they can do lots of things, but they don't like sitting down, they don't like revising. If anything, the government could look at a different way of trying to get these accreditations done, which actually accommodate people like me, because I will probably have to take that exam a couple of times. I'm just going to be really honest, I'm not afraid of it. I'll probably have to take it a couple of times because multiple choice, whew, straight out. I know the information's there, it just doesn't come to the front when I need it. So yeah, I don't know if I should say this or not, but there you go.
No,
But yeah,
it's good. I don't think that Keir Starmer is one of my listeners. I must be said. So I think the suggestions you can put out there, but yeah, I'm sure it'll be a test to do on a office for that sort of thing, and that'll be it. Your choice is take it or leave it, unfortunately. So yeah, so I'm definitely resonating with lots of things you say. So reading, learning, hate it. Give me a podcast or a video to watch. I'm all
yeah.
over it. I'll learn it every day of the week. When it comes to sitting down with a book, with a textbook, and then go fill out this test,
No,
yeah,
exactly.
wish us both
Everyone
luck.
hates it. Everyone hates it. And I talked to, we've got 60 odd agents who are all putting themselves through it, and some of them have got through it and they've gone, oh God, thank God it's done. But oh my gosh, I can now say, and they can always go to level 4, level whatever that's fine. But at the moment, we're ahead of the game because we're starting to get people thinking in the right way for that reason. Honestly, if I could speak to the right person in the government and say, yes, it's great to make it a mandatory thing, but make it suitable for practical sales people, because even to the point of come and watch me on evaluation, come and listen to what I say.
Come on, Kia.
Yes, exactly. And I will say the right things, and I'll do the right processes, and I will, and I think another massive benefit for those people listening who are thinking, oh God, stop pushing it. Actually, there are a lot of rogue agents out there. There's a lot of people who fall into the industry, and unfortunately the level of due diligence and care and attention is giving the estate agents a bad name, and that's something that has got to stop. And how do you do that? You start to weed out the people who are really committed to those who are just here to showboat. I'm an estate agent, I can go on YouTube and say, look at me, look walking around the town. mm, Relationships, due diligence, compliance, processes, that has to be something that is at the forefront of our mind. And once you've done it, box ticked, move on to the good stuff. Just get it done, is all I would say.
No, excellent. So we mentioned there kind of the future of estate agency effectively. So obviously there's the compliance element of it, which is, probably undoubtedly coming in when Labour come in, they'll put some sort of roper situation for compliance for estate agent, which I think is a good thing. What else do you sort of see with the evolution of estate agency over the next 10 years or so?
Oh, okay. So I think we're definitely evolving into a different model, which is uh, it's going to be more of a social media presence. And in terms of trying to get it to the standards of where, like in Australia and America and places like that, estate agents are seen as something as a hierarchy and a celebrity, and oh wow, that person's really made it. But they've worked hard to make it. They've grafted. They've got the accreditations, and they can charge a lot more. So back on your point as well, Chris. Yeah, if you can say, look, I am a step above my competitor, I can charge more. Brilliant. So I think that process, again, I don't think the process for the client changes that much over the next 10 years, unless we can simplify and reduce the time frame of sale to completion. That would be huge. And I think there's lots of things in the woodworks that could potentially happen, that could actually become a lot quicker. And timelines around how to make the chain marry up, and everyone gets to basically not have to stay in a hotel for a night in case anything goes wrong, and we've all been through that one, unfortunately. So I think the process itself needs to evolve into a modern world, from that side of things, from sales to completion. I think tech is going to be something that minimizes a lot of the workload. I think there needs to be so much more automation in terms of the social media aspect. I don't want to be a social media expert. I have to learn a lot from my job, and obviously we pick up a lot of things, but really I want some process or something to do that for me, because I want to be focused on the good stuff and the things that I'm actually trained to do. So I don't think it'll change massively. I think the reputation could get stronger. The only way that we can do that as an industry is to raise those standards of service and increase the fee. That's probably the thing that needs to happen over the 10 years. Compliance itself needs to get stronger, but it needs to get more modern, and that how to actually do those compliance steps and the progression. So
Yeah, good. And I think there's lots of exciting stuff coming out. I mean, the obvious one is AI, which is getting bigger and bigger by the day, sort of thing, which I think estate agents and estate agency is waking up to in quite a good way. Spoiler alert. So I've got a post going up in the not too distant future, which actually is an AI version of me. So it's not actually me doing the presentation in the chat. I'm not going to mention it, but I'm just going to put it online and see if anyone notices. So it's going to be a cloned voice of mine and a cloned sort of body face of mine, sort of thing. I'm just going to put it online and see if anyone notices. If no one notices, I mean, my social media can go through the roof, because I'm going to be like, yep, Here we go. There's
Yeah,
six
I'm going
months
to be
content.
commenting on every single bit. Not this one.
This isn't real. This isn't really Chris. So that was
There's an element there, isn't there? You've got to be very careful because a new tool comes out, a new toy, and somebody who's quite creative goes, "Wow, this is amazing!" And they go hell for leather, and all of a sudden you go, "What is going on?" It's like the first time you discover Canva, and you end up with all these elements and moving pieces. And years ago it was PowerPoint and how the slides went in, and my goodness, it can get very tacky, can't it?
yeah.
No,
I
it's
think
one of the things. Be careful with how much you use.
Yeah, I think my mindset with regard to AI art was like for the first 30 seconds, I was like, oh, AI art's really clever. That's really cool. After about 30 seconds, I was like, yeah, I'm annoyed of it now. Why can't it spell? Why are all the images ridiculous? I can tell that's AI art a million miles off. So yeah, amazing tool, but bored of it very quickly.
Yeah, it happens quite often, doesn't it? So you've got to be quite switched on to those things because everything looks nice and shiny and new. And I suppose that's one thing that we do. Like we see all these coming, and we get the phone calls going, "Oh, use our platform, use our tool," and we go, "Right, okay, we'll put you to the test." We're not releasing it to our agents until we can prove that this really is going to work for them, and it's not just a flash in the pan. So yeah, for those working on your own, make sure you've got the backing of somebody who goes, "Oh, I'd spot that a mile off. That's not you." No, keep it
Absolutely.
real at least.
Absolutely. I get the occasional
Sure, yours
message.
is perfect.
Well, yeah, well, we'll see about that. I get the occasional message from Jim saying, "Oh, that software you use for so and so, what is that?" I'm like, "I know where you're going with this. I know what you
You
want,
never
Jim.
know.
So that's good. So, final question for yourself. So, if anyone was listening to this and they were sat on the fence about going self-employed and being a self-employed estate agent in the next 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it may be, what would you say to that person?
I think that they would need to take stock of their personal circumstances as the first thing, financial, emotional, everything that's happening in their life. Really evaluate what's happening there because this is going to be tough. I mean, serious highs and some grafting. And then there's always those moments that we've already covered. And I think that it's really important for people to go, right, where do I exist now? And where do I want to see myself in a few years? Even breaking it down, 10 years, 5, 2, because this is not something that you go into it half-assed. You've got to be able to commit it. You've got to be at least financially stable in terms of bills for 3 to 6 months in terms of just seeing your first completion. And we're not afraid of saying that to people. We'd like to take the right people, but it's got to be right for them, the right timing. So I would say look at that and really take stock of what your circumstances are, and weighing up the pros and cons of where you are right now, because if you're in a traditional route, you're feeding somebody else's pocket, let's be honest. If you're in a sort of more hybrid model, and obviously I'm from the purple bricks days, and there's different reasons around what works and what doesn't. And I think it's a case of, again, taking stock of how much work you do, how much effort do you put into it, versus who gets the luxury of getting that money, and or how is it divided across a whole team. So I would say, yes, you're going to probably swap in terms of the emotional status of hard graft and work. But in 12 months, you're going to look back and go, that's mine. I did that for myself. I've got a future that can get bigger and bolder. And we always go with like thinking big. And we want to say to people, look, obviously you're going to talk about your first listings in your first 3 to 6 months, but give yourself that target of 5 years of what you want to see that house purchase, that family luxury holiday, the debt-free life, the just being comfortable and having the ability just to go, yeah, I want to do this weekend. Brilliant. And then you've got the factor of, life work balance. I've been self-employed and I'm self-employed for this business as well for 18 months nearly. And I will never look back. I may have just my blazer on right now, but I got rid of all of my office wear about 6 months ago. I was like, I'm not going back, because the 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, I think is probably something that will eventually, in certain industries, it will start to fizzle out. And it does not work for a state agency. It's always been, I've been in models that have always been really 7 days a week. But we're talking flexibility around those hours of going, I want to do this afternoon. Yeah, I might message, I might have a WhatsApp, I might have a phone call, but really, I've got time with my family today. I'm going to have a date night. I'm going to go and have coffee with a friend. And that's the flexibility around it. So, really assessing where you're at, where you want to be, what are the benefits and pros and cons of where you are right now. And we're really thinking about self employed as not a scary idea, because I think there's a lot of stigma around self-employment, but actually it's changing your mindset around, I have the ability to do what I want with this, and in 5 years time I can look back and go, that's mine and no one can take that away from me.
What an amazing place to finish the episode. Kelly, thank you so much for your time today. It's been absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much for coming on.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks, Kelly.